just do it with Miami Dolphins. The pressure, he's in trouble. Loses the football. Touchdown! Got it! You have got to be kidding me. Jalen Waddle. It's a Dolphin touchdown. Throwing deep upfield on the near side. Ran open. Touchdown! Looking deep. He's got it there. Touchdown! The run from Tua Tagovailoa. Touchdown! He's going deep. He's got it over the touchdown again. Touchdown! Nearly a 2-1. Tagovailoa trying to make it for it. Fires for the end zone. Touchdown! Touchdown, Dolphins! Beautiful day to be a Dolphin fan. 1, 2, 3, 3. Let's go! What's good, Fid Nation? What's good? It's your boy Reason, and we are back here for another one, and I got a real special one for all y'all today. The man, the myth, the legend, returning for the third time to the channel, friend of the channel, Eric Crocker, one of the best in the business. He does Locked On 49ers. He also does, and I recommend, whether you're a 49ers fan or not, check out his morning show. It's absolutely fantastic. Fresh off the jet. Feet just touched a couple hours ago. How you feeling, brother? I know you were watching the Jackson State game. How you feeling today, brother?
I was watching the Jackson State game, and obviously the big news out of that is Deion Sanders. He'll be leaving Jackson State and heading over to Colorado. So it was fun to kind of watch his last game, or supposedly his last game that he coached at Jackson State. But aside from that, feeling good, man. Just chilling, watching college football, now talking some 49er football. Let's go.
Bro, and I just, before we get onto the 49er Dolphin stuff, that dime you reposted that his son threw on that out route, like that was a nice ball placement there. Looked like the future Colorado quarterback right there, huh?
Looks like a future Colorado quarterback. That's what it's looking like to me. We'll see.
All right, so let's get into this, because I mean, honestly, Dolphins are 8-3. McDaniel. I wanted McDaniel since last offseason when he was in the talks of OC between him and Pep Hamilton, were two names that were coming before we, I believe Shanahan blocked them, and then we settled on Godsey and Stoodsville in-house, but McDaniel was the guy I wanted. Brother, this guy, say 3 Hail Marys in his name. He is honestly, listen, and you'll understand this more than anyone. Play calling is just like game reps for players. You'll become a better play caller with experience. And I think the only thing that's holding him back right now is you can see sometimes his inexperience as a play caller. But other than that, all is advertised, the motion, absolute genius, loving every minute. And I'm so excited for this matchup because I look at it as the protege versus the mentor. Because Croc, when people were telling me when Tua was struggling under Flores, and they were like, oh, I'd love to see him under Peyton. I'd love to see. I was like, no, I'd love to see him under Kyle Shanahan. I'd love to see what Kyle Shanahan could do with this guy. And now we're seeing something of that all effect of, McDaniel probably brought in the best vertical threat the Shanahan system's ever seen. But I wanted to start off getting
Julio Jones up there too, but yeah.
Okay. I want to get your, and 110% right. And that could lead me to another point, but I'll save that one for a little bit here. Your thoughts on McDaniel from what you've seen as, a 49er fan who's watched him blossom outside of your organization now?
It's been awesome to see him. This is a guy a lot of people in the 49ers organization were really excited about. A lot of fans. You couldn't find anyone to say a bad thing about him, whether it's players, former players, guys that he coached in the past. I remember listening to Hawkins, and, Hawk was talking about how, he taught him 3 different releases, and he's like, look, all you have to know is these 3 releases, and I'll tell you when to use this release. And if you use it against a certain cornerback in his style, he won't really be able to touch you off the line. And he was right every single time. He's just kind of a real, legit student of the game. And obviously he played the game as well. And, obviously not the highest level, but extremely smart, very, very self-aware of who he is. And he stays true to that. and it comes off a little quirky at times, but I think everybody respects him for being as real and as genuine as he is. So awesome stuff he's doing, obviously in Miami, and I think a lot of people believe this. I'd say this. That one of my biggest takeaways outside of him just being a coach and leader of men, because that was probably maybe one of the biggest questions, is
Mhm.
what he's done with Tua.
Mm.
And everybody, they wrote Tua off. He's bad, he's terrible. Oh man, you should have had Justin Herbert. And I'm not saying Herbert wouldn't be better in the offense, whatever, we don't know. But I do know how the coaching has improved the consistency into his game and where he's at with the third downs
Mm.
and against pressure
Mm.
and all these different things, these stats where he's near the top. I think a lot of it has to do with the system, and it just goes to show how much coaching can really help a young quarterback develop.
I don't know if you saw it, but that Aditi how do I say her name? Kabbalah. I'm sorry, I don't want to butcher her name, but the CBS correspondent. She's the one who broke the story about Flores and McDaniel during last week about how, I don't know if you saw that because it's going on Twitter a little bit, but basically, and you watched Tua coming out, one of his strengths coming out of Alabama was his eye manipulation. The guy was already at an elite level with his eyes coming out of Alabama, and that was one of his biggest translatable skills to the next level, right? And she basically made a report that Flores and our staff discouraged his eye manipulation, while McDaniel, after watching the film, was like, this is a gift. Like, he's one of the best I've ever seen use his eyes. And he's highlighted that in this offense, right? Like, I break down, I've been doing it since Tua started. Every Tuesday we do Tua's Day here on Phinside The NFL, where we break down every drop back of Tua Tagovailoa. And the eye manipulation, you would see it over the first 2 years, but not at the Alabama level. This year, you're like, there's about 4, 5, 6 times a game where he's moving defenders off their spots with their eyes. And it's McDaniel. Listen, I said it before, I'll say it again. He's the brightest apple on the Shanahan tree. I
Yeah,
believe that.
well, and I think that part of it, right? A coach figuring out a strength of his player and putting him in position to win, right?
Mm-hmm.
And understanding, hey man, he excels at this area, and we're going to utilize that. That's actually something that I think Jimmy Garoppolo still struggles with.
Yep.
Jimmy doesn't do a whole lot of eye manipulation, and I think sometimes that gets him in trouble. I think Jimmy's a little bit more of a robot, and he'll throw those tight window throws. He puts guys in position for terrific run after catch opportunities, but there's not a whole lot of moving guys off of a spot as opposed to what you're saying you're seeing from Tua. So I think
Mm-hmm.
McDaniel being able to tap into that part of Tua's game, I think that's huge.
And I know Jimmy G, just because of your offense, you guys like to target the intermediate level of the field, right? The middle of the field. The things Tua's doing over the intermediate level of the field, because I'm just going to tell you personally what happened. There was a report, and then I saw Jimmy G talked about it yesterday, whatever. But there was a report, Florio was pushing in the offseason that we were interested in Jimmy G. I was told by someone in the building that is incorrect, and this goes back to what you said about Julio. I was told that they had no interest in Jimmy G because he actually put limitations on what they wanted to do in that offense, as opposed to what they could do with a guy like Matt Ryan. And you saw what Matt Ryan was doing. And I was told that there was no interest. So that's why all offseason, crazy. I did a show 2 weeks ago, and all offseason I was telling people, stop with the Jimmy G Tua comparisons. They're lazy, not the same player. They're not going to be the same. I told everyone, Tua in this offense, his ceiling, it's not Matt Ryan, but it's Matt Ryan MVP. And then if you were to put up his numbers this year and extrapolate them over a 16-game span, Croc, because I did it 2 weeks ago on a Saturday show, they're almost identical to Matt Ryan's Atlanta numbers. He's off by like 22 yards in terms of total yards by the end of the season.
Yeah.
Like, they're identical. And you can just see, because I know when there was rumblings that Flores wanted to move off, I heard that you guys were a team that was sniffing around. And I know Shanahan and McDaniel were both intrigued with Tua during the draft process, and one of them just finally got their hands on them. But enough of that.
Real quick, I think the
Yeah,
right guy, the
Mhm.
right guy got his hands on him because although those guys come up together, McDaniel, he coached with Kyle Shanahan for a really long time, right?
Yep.
They know each other like the back of their hands. It's almost like
Since
like
Mike
a
was
married
around.
couple. They could probably finish each other's sentences, but they definitely go about coaching a different way. At least that's what it looks like to the media and some of the things that I've heard, from inside the building. Not saying, Kyle's just this super asshole or anything like that,
Mhm.
but Kyle and McDaniel, they are very different in the sense of I think McDaniel goes out of his way to build this trusting, uh,
Like
very
Debo.
open, communicative
Mhm.
relationship with his quarterback, and instills a certain level of confidence in this guy that you can do
Mm.
anything, right?
I gotcha.
And
Yeah.
probably trust me because I'm gonna make sure I put you in a great situation as well. Kyle Shanahan's not like that. Kyle
Yeah.
Shanahan, it's you do it this way. If you do it my way, you will be successful. But if you're not doing it his way, then he just kind of, I don't know, it kind of goes haywire a little bit, and it feels like nothing is good enough until you do it that way. So I guess maybe it's good he just holds guys to a really high standard. But I think as it pertains to like getting the most out of a guy, maybe that might be trying to develop or um, become the best version of himself. But obviously there's hiccups within that. I think that can be kind of hard with Kyle, as opposed to a guy
Mm.
like Mike McDaniel, who you feel like, all right, like he's rocking with me tough, even if I mess up.
Yeah.
And I think that has allowed Tua to really kind of grow within this offense without feeling like he's not doing something good enough.
Let me ask you this, Debo. We all know like him and McDaniel had an amazing I heard he used to sit in on meetings all throughout the week, and then in between the meetings he would pick McDaniel's brain. Like they had a really good bond, a really good relationship, and then Debo had like one of his arguably his best year. How's his
It was
relationship
his
with
best year.
Shanahan? Yeah, I know. Well, is his relationship is that a perfect example of like what you're saying is how differently they both handled Debo Samuel? Because McDaniel did exactly what you said, built that bond relationship, built up his belief, had that year, and then you heard that we all basically knew Shanahan ain't gonna let you sit in on meetings and give you that time of day like that. Is that kind of like the difference you're talking about?
I'd say Debo might be a bad example because I think Debo is really tight with Shanahan. They like talk every day. They talk about everything. So he definitely has a more personal relationship with Debo Samuel. I think with Kyle, just in general, and again, from the guys, we've had a 49er player on our podcast, Locked on 49ers and whatnot, and it's just very, this is
Mm.
what I expect, do this, and we're good. But the moment
Yeah.
you don't get it, I think he really likes tough guys. So if you are like an extreme tough guy, then he'll love you. Like he loved Jeff Wilson. Like
Yeah.
Jeff Wilson is an Iron Man. Like he's
Love
tough
that guy.
guy, gritty, undrafted, had to work for every
Tell me he
snap
loved
that he
Trent
got.
Sherfield, Croc, because this guy is awesome.
Loved Trent Sherfield. He loved Trent
Yeah.
Sherfield. He talked about him and his preparation. And,
He's a stud.
Trent Sherfield was part of the reason why early in 2021, Brandon Ike was in the doghouse because you had Trent Sherfield who did everything how Kyle wants him to do it, as opposed to Ayuk, who's still learning how to be a pro. And
Mm.
now all of a sudden you're not getting the targets, you're not getting the looks, even your snaps are getting cut in half, regardless of if you were a first round pick or not, because this guy is doing it exactly how I want. And again, that kind of still goes back to okay, holding guys to a certain standard, but still that like level of confidence that you're bringing into those guys. I think Kyle, some of these guys, they kind of tank in their confidence, and it's hard to get out of that because eventually Kyle's just not going to play you, and that's that's tough.
Yeah.
That's tough on a lot of
Yeah.
young guys in this on this team, as opposed to what you get from McDaniel. Now I haven't seen how he handles young guys, but again, just kind of seeing from the outside looking in on how he's handled Tua and looking at them on the sideline and hearing that conversation,
Mm.
about hey man, like I watched your high school stuff. I was watching your highlights, man.
The
That was
technique.
terrible, and
Yeah.
and just having just kind of that banter back and forth in
Yeah.
that conversation. I think that really helps just the level of confidence that you feel like your coach has in you. And everybody's different, but clearly it's worked for Tua.
Bro, and his kick game is ridiculous, might I add too. Like McDaniel is, I love him. Honestly, with the Aviators, I get young Shula vibes every time I
Bro,
see
what's
him.
up with that? Is that like a Miami? It's like a
I
Miami
don't,
vibe. That's why I
I
said I
don't
looked
know,
at him. I'm
bro.
like, but he never wore these. It's like some kind of like Miami vibe. Like he about to start salsa dancing or something. I don't know. I don't know what they do in Miami. I ain't never been to
Bro.
Miami, but yeah.
I wanted to ask you this. Christian McCaffrey. I think when he's healthy and the full go, I think he's screw running back. I think he's one of the best football players in the NFL. We had problems with Fields. We had problems with Breece Hall. We got problems with quick guys that can get to the edge. Sometimes we can have problems setting to the edge, and containment can give us issues with guys that get to it fast. And obviously we know, I mean, we don't got to go in depth about the outside zone. What can we expect from you guys in your run game with Christian McCaffrey? But also, you guys got some new faces thanks to Eli Mitchell being the NFC version of J.K. Dobbins, basically. And you know what I mean? Super talented kid, but just, glass tiger, brother,
Yeah.
Like because you guys got a couple interesting young kids coming up. You got that Jordan Mason kid, you got Tyrion Davis Price, both rookies, I believe, too.
Yeah.
What can we expect from the run game, especially from given what I just told you, that sometimes with speedy teams that get to the edge quick, we can have issues with containment.
So as far as Jordan Mason goes, and we'll see how many carries he gets.
Mm-hmm.
I actually thought that there was a chance, and I know the 49ers really liked Jeff Wilson, so I didn't think they would let him go, but it was very clear that Jordan Mason was a Jeff Wilson clone.
Okay.
So I thought maybe they let him go, just because, you got the younger guy, he has more years on his contract, he's cheaper, etc. You can save a little bit of money, but I knew they really liked Jeff Wilson, so they kept him until they had to let him go. And I think now we've seen a little bit more of an uptick in Jordan Mason's carries, especially since Elijah Mitchell, who you previously mentioned, kind of went down with an injury. But Jordan Mason, he's an inside downhill hard runner. Did a lot of that at Georgia Tech, obviously. Tagovailoa Price, who you might see get some carries. I don't know. Look, Kyle's kind of weird. You think that he wants to have this running back by committee thing, but he doesn't. If you got the hot hand, he'll just keep feeding you the ball, even though he has these other guys that can potentially carry
Price is his own runner too, right?
Yeah. So Tagovailoa Price was more of an inside kind of zone type runner at LSU. But he does have a nice little wiggle to him. He runs a lot like Montgomery, the running back from the Bears. So kind of identical, but has a little bit better burst. Now, we haven't really been able to see that at the NFL level just yet, at least in the regular season. But he does have that. As far as Christian McCaffrey goes, and it's been really weird. There's something going on with his knee. So over the last couple weeks, 3 weeks, if you look at yards per carry, way down. Now, I don't know if it's the knee or if they're just not blocking good for him specifically, but they're blocking way better for Elijah Mitchell when he was healthy, who was averaging close to 6 yards per carry as opposed to like the 2.8 or whatever Christian McCaffrey's been using. But I think he's been far more effective outside of the second game he played against the Rams. He was very effective there. Outside of that, he's been much more effective as a pass catcher than just a guy that you're going to hand the ball off to 15 times and he's picking up all these chuck yardage.
Just kill you with swing passes with Christian McCaffrey. Well, that's what's so amazing about him, right? If he gets his legs under him as a runner or as a guy coming out of the backfield as a pass catcher, just get the ball in his hands as a ball carrier and he can make things happen, right? Did you hear about Trent Williams? Because I know he wasn't on the injury report, but there was a report from, I believe it was Cam Inman, who said that Trent Williams had left to the locker room after warmups because of a back issue. Can you shed any light on that?
Yeah, I don't know much about it. I think when that news was coming out, I was traveling to Vegas. So
okay.
I saw it. I saw people kind of post something about it, but I never followed up with it. So I would, from everything I've seen, I would expect to see him out there on the field. And the way these things go, the way the NFL goes, they give you that shot, you'll be good to play in the game.
Yeah.
So they give you that cortisone shot in the booty cheek. So I'd expect for him to be out there and be full go. Especially dealing with a back tightness, I think he'll be all right. He has had some other things he's had to work through, ankle injuries, high ankle sprains, etc. And when he does have that, you can definitely see a little bit of a downtick in kind of how he plays.
Speaking of injured tackles, Terron Armstead's most likely doubtful. I was told he's trying to get fitted for a brace and try a brace this week, and it doesn't look like he's going to be able to go. I know you guys are licking your chops with Nick Bosa. He's absolutely murdering at this. How do you see that one working out if we got Greg Little on the left side?
I would say having a backup tackle or someone who's not your guy, having to guard, or go up against Nick Bosa all game, isn't a real good. Like that's not a recipe for success. And Nick
Yeah.
Bosa, he is as good as advertised, and you just have to give him a lot of attention. I think a lot of teams now, what they've been doing, they've been like chipping him off the line of scrimmage. They'll line up, and he definitely changes. Excuse me. He changes the way you have to call plays because you have to account for him so much. So a lot of teams, they'll motion a running back not just to his side, but they'll put him right next to Nick Bosa, chip him before they do anything else. So
Yeah.
you definitely use more resources to kind of slow him down. And even then, if you look at a lot of his numbers, I mean, whether it's double teams, chips, whatever, he's still getting in there. And I think his biggest thing, because I always wonder, like, man, how does this guy do it? Because he's not this Von Miller bendy guy off the edge. Like, I mean, he has it, but that's not, you don't think like, oh man, he's going to bend to the ground, pop up, sack the quarterback like you've seen from
Yeah.
Von Miller. But man, he's just so technically sound and his motor is through the roof. So he doesn't stop. He doesn't stop at all. And I think that's tough because for someone like him who doesn't stop for an entire game, at some point he'll get you, and that's kind of what's been happening. But teams have worked on slowing them down because they've given a lot of attention to him.
Yeah, we talked about it this week on the channel, and Alec Ingold, Durham Smythe, chip locks. Here we come, basically. You know what I mean? Second level. Let's talk about the second level because I love your front seven, right? Like, and Eric Armstead's going to be back this week, right? Too. But I
That's
love
big
your
for the 49ers.
bro. I love your second level so much, man. But let's talk about the Dolphins second level because this is what worries me. We don't have really good coverage guys. And George Kittle. Is this a game where okay, you talked about McCaffrey having the knee issue. You talked about how they've been using the other running backs. So what do you from your standpoint, what do you see this game plan being a heavy dosage of offensively, especially like, second level, we don't, unless Eric Rowe is out there on Kittle, and Eric Rowe's kind of taking a little bit of a nosedive over the last year and a half in terms of overall skills. And he was probably our best coverage box safety, obviously. And he's better than any of our coverage linebackers like Jerome Baker, Orlando Roberts, a disaster in coverage. How would you attack us with what you're talking about your run game, because usually you guys are a heavy dosage of run the ball down the throat?
Yeah, well, so it's very similar because there's been some games where maybe the 49ers didn't run the ball as well, but still just the action of a
Keeping
run
them
or a
honest.
run fake
Yeah.
is what they're really trying to get. So early in games, and I think last game, I want to say, if I'm not mistaken, I'd have to go back and look, but Jimmy Garoppolo threw the ball like 28 times in the first half, right? And typically you think he throws the ball 28 times for an entire game.
Yeah.
But they've been doing different things to where it kind of throws off opposing defenses, keeps them off balance a little bit more, as opposed to just we're just going to run the ball on first down, second down, and then throw the ball on third, or a slant. You know what I'm saying? I'd say as far as how the 49ers will attack a team, it's really hard because I feel like each week it's somebody different. And you talked about George Kittle, and there's a lot of people a little upset. I don't want to say upset, but we talk about the usage of George Kittle, which we just don't think it's enough. You look at guys like Travis Kelce, and everybody tell you, "Oh man, best tight end in the NFL," and you won't get any argument from me on that. But I will say George Kittle has just as much ability at the
He's
tight end
right
position
there.
as anyone. He's
Yeah.
a terrific route runner. He does all these great things. Run after catch is probably the best in the NFL as a tight end, and he just doesn't get looks. I mean, they will go a game where they throw the ball to him twice, and he'll have one catch for 2 yards.
Yeah.
Or I mean, one catch on 2 targets. And you're like, what the heck? Like, why aren't they looking for him? And he does different things. He blocks, etc. Like, whatever. But with someone that's as talented as him, you have to figure out different ways to just get the ball in his hands. And when they do, big things happen because he's so special after the catch. But it doesn't seem like something that they force, which I would, just because when his ball's in his hands, some great things happen. Same with Deebo Samuel. Force him the ball because when the ball is in his hands, great things happen. Now, because of all the weapons the 49ers do have, it has opened up things to where there's windows for like Brandon Ayuk. So you've seen an increase, for the most part, in Ayuk's production. I mean, outside of maybe the Cardinals game where he only had 2 catches, they just happened to both be touchdowns, right? But Ayuk has been a consistent 6, 7, 8 catches for 85 yards, right? And
Yeah.
that's kind of more. And I think a lot of that has to do with people giving more attention to Kittle, more attention to Debo, more attention to Christian McCaffrey, because you have to count for all of them. And then all of a sudden it's, oh man, it's Brandon Ayuk hitting us for 20 yards.
Um, Flipping back to your defense, I love the kid coming out of USC. What have you thought of Drake Jackson this year so far?
He's been good. He's been more of a like rotation player
Mhm.
and not a player who is going to be in there every single
Yeah, he's
down.
behind Bosa, right? Basically.
He'll rush with Bosa at
Mhm.
times, and Bosa he rushes from wherever he feels like rushing from. So if he wants to rush from the left on the play, like he'll just line up on the left and rush. Or if he wants to line up on the right side, he'll line up on the right. So Bosa he lines up wherever he wants to line up, and then the other guys they all just play off of that. So ideally there would be like Ebicam in there. Ebicam has been
He was
dealing with
having a great.
some injuries, kind of banged up and whatnot.
He's a
So
beast
then you
though.
have
When
some of
he's
the others,
healthy,
sir.
he's a beast, man.
Yeah,
Samson's a monster when he's healthy.
yeah, he's nice. He gets after it. But I think the dark horse on the defensive line has probably been a Minahu. And if you look
Mm.
at like
He's
some of the
healthy, right?
numbers,
He's healthy now, right? He's
yeah,
back this
Minahu's
week.
healthy and he's been very active. He doesn't get a whole lot of snaps where he's just getting after the quarterback, but his rate of getting back there on pressures is extremely high. It's like one of the top in the NFL.
Mm.
So having him be able to play off of Nick Bosa, I think that has worked very well for the 49ers. And then that's when they kind of sprinkle in Drake Jackson off of a Minahu.
Okay, the real question though is, I
Oh, real
mean,
quick, that's also
yeah,
been without Armstead. So I have to see exactly
yeah,
how they utilize those guys because I know sometimes the Minahu will kind of find himself playing a little bit on the inside or he'll be on the outside and do things. And then you throw Armstead into that, who's been out for a while now. And that's going to be something different that we haven't seen for a month or so.
but you don't think they're gonna you don't think they're gonna go like dive head first into a high snap count with Armstead right away, do you?
The 49ers, at least Kyle Shanahan, and I don't, maybe they'll have him on the snap count, but if you're healthy, like he just plays you. So,
Okay.
like if you're ready to go, you say you're ready, you play. So I remember like Elijah Mitchell, he's really banged up last year, knee injury, broken ribs, all types of stuff, and you think like okay they're gonna have him play and maybe he's not gonna touch the ball that much. He had 27 carries. Right? So
Yeah.
Kyle typically doesn't care. It's just if you're healthy, like you're playing a lot of snaps.
The question we all want to ask you though. Okay, Jimmy Ward's more so a nickelback for y'all, right? But
Now, yeah.
Charvarius Ward and Lenore, how are they going to even keep up with Tyreek and Jalen Waddle? Now, I do like that safety Funga you guys got. I like him. Tayshaun Gibson. I mean, this isn't like 3 or 4 years ago. How do you see that matchup working out? Because that might be the biggest mismatch of all this week. This week on either side of the ball.
That's a great question. And when you look at really who Miami Dolphins have at receivers, right? Like they're
Yeah,
going to be a mismatch for pretty much every secondary
everything.
that they
Yeah,
go up against. I can't think of a secondary off the top of my head where you go into the game and you think, oh yeah, these guys are going to slow down Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. Those are just guys that can hit you at any time. And that's a
yeah,
tough thing because you can corral them, corral them, corral them. You could do really good things, keep things underneath, but then they can catch a 5-yard pass and make one guy miss, and then they're just off to the races. And they're so fast that that's just really difficult for anyone that's going to be playing against them. So, how do you stop them, right? Like nobody really has figured it out. Aren't those guys like number 1 and like number 3 or 4 in receptions and yards? So nobody truly has like a legit answer for stopping them for an entire game. I would say don't focus on stopping them, just focus on limiting the big
big
blows, right?
plays. Yeah.
So can we keep them in front, tackle well, right? Play more of a 2 high shell. Okay, they might catch something underneath, come and smack them, right? And I think the 49ers, they do a really good job of that. If I had to guess, and this is without me knowing, and maybe somebody else can dive into the analytics of it, 49ers don't give up real explosive plays, really.
No.
So, however they do that, they've been running a whole lot more quarters. They've done a good job of that. Now, I can think off the top of my head, the Chargers game, there was a explosive passing play, touchdown to DeAndre Carter on the corner route. Looked like some kind of Hufanga got caught in like, do I carry him? Do I not carry him? And then like nobody carried him. It was a touchdown. Now, obviously, like that was one of our few big plays of the game because they didn't really throw for a bunch of yards, but that explosive play did happen.
Was that a soft spot in the zone where the corner stayed underneath, and then you're saying Hufanga didn't carry over? Is that what happened there?
It
And then got
looked
hit in the
like
corner and went up the sideline, I'm guessing.
Hufanga came down, and then I don't know maybe if his eyes were bad or whatever. I try not to guess on what guys' responsibilities are because you just kind of don't know exactly what they're being
Yeah, you
told
don't
to
know
do
what's being
in
called.
meetings. But
Yeah,
it
yeah.
looked like he potentially either he was responsible for carrying the vertical out the slot in some kind of match coverage, or maybe a safety was supposed to be over and he wasn't there. And by the time the guy was passing, it was like, oh damn, like there's
Done.
nobody there, and
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
not good. So there was that play. I can think of a play in the Chiefs game off the top of my head where it was Valdez-Scantling just ran by Travarius Ward on a play vertically down the field. So that happened, and that was tough because it was like a 3rd and 15 play, and I think Ward was playing the sticks, and they just kept going. So I think he was kind of sitting on, oh, he's gonna run, a stick route, and he just
Yeah.
didn't. He just kept running
Okay.
straight. So he got him there. But for the most part, the 49ers have done a really good job of limiting the big plays, and I mean that goes to not just this year. That's kind of been their thing, even with D'Amico Ryans or Robert Saleh. I remember back in the Super Bowl having to play against the Kansas City Chiefs and thinking like, oh man, 49ers, they haven't given up big plays, but dang, they're playing against the Chiefs. And for most of the game, they did limit the big plays. Like there weren't the big plays throwing down the field until you had that wasp play at the end. So they typically do a good job of limiting big plays. It still is tough when you go into a game knowing that at any time, a guy from the Dolphins, Waddle or Hill, can just catch a ball and just hurt you
Take it.
that
Yeah.
way. And I don't know if you can really account for that.
And I gotta be honest, the same way y'all are licking your chops with Bosa and no Armstead, I'm licking my chops playing a predominantly zone team because Tua just slices and dices the zone. It's just it's kind of he's always been pretty good against zone, but now that we've added you can't press us really either, because if you press us and we beat you off the
Yeah.
line, it's a wrap. You know what I mean? So you're kind of damned if you do. Like, I don't know if you watched it, if you went back and watched any film of us, but like that Cleveland game. I mean, the last 2 weeks, he's had 8 or 9 different receivers, and Tyreek, he's top 300, well, 299, right? And then the other time he was 302. So basically 300 each game. And Tyreek and Waddle haven't even had to break 100 yards.
Right. Yeah.
So go ahead.
They've been doing a really good job of like moving the ball around, and I've
Spreading
seen
it.
our guy Trent Sherfield getting in on the action. So on one game, 4 catches, like 60 yards and a touchdown.
He's a beast.
Great toe tapping touchdown in the back of
You
the end
saw that,
zone.
eh? You
Yeah,
saw
so,
that, huh? That was,
yeah, I watch all these guys, man. So
Yeah.
and it's been exciting watching him because I tell a lot of people about like Trent Sherfield. He had an amazing training camp for the 49ers. Training camp preseason, amazing. And then he didn't get that same love during the regular season. And a lot of people are worried now because a guy can do great in the preseason, and then in the regular season it's like, oh well, so the preseason doesn't matter because he didn't do well. And I'm like, well, there's a thing called roster politics.
Yeah.
And regardless of how well you do in preseason, if you have Brandon Ayuk, Debo Samuel, and whoever else over you, that were drafted or you pay a lot of money to them, those guys are just going to get more looks, like regardless. And I think now he was kind of brought in to be maybe a special teamer, but also a 4th receiver and potentially could be like a 3rd receiver. And I think as of late, he's been really filling in as that 3rd receiver very well.
And look at what Wes and McDaniel said. We paid Cedric Wilson all that money, and they said, nope, Sherfield's the guy. Even Craycraft is getting more love than Cedric Wilson does in our offense. And it goes back to what we talked about earlier. If you work hard, you're going to see results, right?
He's prepared, too. Nobody's more prepared than Trent Sherfield. There's a great interview with him on KBR, and you have to find that, man. But if you ever want to know what he's made of and just listen to him talk about like his preparation and his process and how it's been, there's a great episode, a segment of him on KBR. That's the 49ers flagship radio. And it was good. And I was like, okay, I see why he's a Kyle Shanahan guy. He learns every spot. He doesn't want there to be any reason why he can't be on the field if an opportunity presents itself.
You guys don't give up a ton of pressures. I was looking at your pressure numbers, and Aaron Banks has given up the most, I think, this year at 21. Bradley Chubb and Jalen Phillips have been pretty special, and Melvin Ingram's been adding something in there too. Are you pretty confident with your offensive line heading into this game against our pass rush?
Typically, I would be. They've done pretty well, throughout the year of keeping Jimmy relatively clean. They were coming off a game against Arizona where they didn't even give up a hurry in that game. He didn't get touched. He didn't get knocked down. He didn't get sacked. I mean, it was a really clean game for the 49ers offensive line. But then the very next week, you play against the New Orleans Saints and their front, and it felt like Jimmy Garoppolo was getting hit every single play. And it looked like the Saints were doing some things where it was some stunts, and it was like, okay, you got one guy stunning, hitting this guy. You got guys turned around, they're looking at each other, but it's like, well, who's blocking the guy running at the quarterback? There was some confusion there, and yeah, it just was not good. So if the Miami Dolphins get last week's version of the 49ers offensive line, then they might be able to really kick Jimmy Garoppolo's ass, but if the 49ers come back to kind of what they've been throughout the year, they keep Jimmy relatively clean. And kind of like Tua, and I saw somebody in the stats say Tua only needs 2.4 seconds to throw. I think Jimmy Garoppolo, too, he's another guy who likes to play with timing and rhythm. Mm-hmm. And the difference is, again, he's missing the eye manipulation part that Tua has. But, in the sense of snapping balls off, putting the ball in areas where guys are going to run after catch. And if there's one thing, 49ers don't have like pure speed, like they're just going to, catch a go route and outrun everybody. But Deebo Samuel and George Kittle and those guys, you get the ball in their hands in space and they will break tackles. And you got to bring everything when you go and tackle those guys because they're going to bring it and they don't stop. So I think that's kind of where, when you look at the 49ers offense, where they start to kind of excel and they've been getting better and better and more of a groove as the season is going on.
Man, I wish we had Kittle. Mike Gesicki, he ain't it, man. He's a fraud. I don't know who tried to tell me he was a top 5 tight end. I wanted to get your thoughts here before we wrap this up because I don't want to take up too much of your time. Because I know you're traveling and everything and you're a busy man. Your thoughts on I'm gonna have Tyler Dunn on the show this week. He wrote that 2-part Tua piece that Raheem Mostert was quoted in talking about, we have a quarterback now who can actually sling it. And then when asked about the difference between San Francisco and Miami, he said, we have more talent here. And that kind of set, Twitter ablaze a little bit in terms of, it was, Debo brought it up. I think, didn't Brandon Ayuk talk about it? I know Jeff Wilson talked about it. Even Tyreek Hill tweeted about it and said, man, Raheem out here starting problems. What were your overall thoughts about that? Because, it's like we go back to what you talked about Kyle Shanahan earlier. I got a ton of respect for Kyle Shanahan. I got a ton of respect for that whole tree. And, it kind of goes back to what you said. Like we've always heard, and you made sure to clarify yourself. You say, I'm not saying he's an asshole, but we've heard, I don't want to say that, but what you're talking about, how, hey, he wants things done a certain way.
He's a little throwback. He's kind of more of a throwback coach.
Yeah. And do you feel like, Jeff Wilson really felt and Raheem Mostert both come off like they feel like they were undervalued and they didn't get the fair shake? And you go back to Welker. Now, I don't think this is an indictment on Shanahan. I think it's just the belief in McDaniel. Wes Welker putting his trust to the next stage of his coaching career in Mike McDaniel, a first-time head coach. That's one of the things that spoke a lot of volumes to me because this is a former Super Bowl winner. This is we drafted him. Dolphins drafted him. This is a great player. And to put his trust in that young of a coach spoke volumes to me about McDaniel. That's why I had no questions about whether he was a leader of men. And what would you say about this whole situation? Because it kind of feels like there's an underlying tone here, and it's not so much a jab. I think Ayuk and Samuel and all these guys get along with Wilson. I don't think that's the issue. I think it's more so coaching. Am I wrong?
When I first heard it, obviously you see kind of the comments, and I understand, and you probably do as well, right? Like, think
Yeah,
about how many things you say, when talking about your team that gets taken out of context, and it's like,
yeah,
well, I said that, but you forgot this part, right?
yeah,
And that happens a lot. So when I saw his initial comments, my mind and it just went straight to, okay, I could see where he said that, but maybe there's a word or two that followed up with that, or that he said before to make it not as blunt, you know.
yeah,
And unfortunately, we don't see that version of it, so it's just gonna come off as what was posted, which the author of the article did an amazing job. I'm pretty sure, if I had to guess, because I know the 49ers fan base, and they can really get active. It probably is his most read article of the year, you know,
yeah.
and he did his job and with whatever he was trying to do, and if he indeed said that, the tough thing is with 49ers, we talked a lot about passing game, things like that, but they are number one against the run. Like,
Oh,
so now it's like, all right, Jeff. That's cool. I love it. I want to see these guys really go at it. We know Jeff Wilson's going to run hard. Raheem
yeah.
Mostert, as long as he plays, he's one play away from scoring a touchdown. But guys like Fred Warner and Dre Greenlaw, man, those guys, they bring it like I've never seen before, as far as like the
I love him.
energy and tenacity, and like really trying to like take your head off every time they hit you. And you're going to see Fred Warner. You're going to hear him.
I
You're
love
going to
him.
hear him talking trash. You're going to see his mannerisms, and it's nonstop.
You
It's
guys have been
literally
so blessed
all
with
game long.
linebackers. It's
Yeah.
ridiculous how blessed you guys. Even the linebackers that didn't work out, like Reuben Foster. Remember how like highly touted he was, bro? You guys have been so blessed with linebackers. Patrick Willis. We go all the way back to Ronnie Lott. You guys have been so freaking blessed with like brother. I am not a Jerome Baker fan. I think he is a wide nine will linebacker. I don't think he's meant for a hybrid 3-4-4-3 aggressive. I mean, he can blitz as an off the ball linebacker, but he's now he is having a good season. But when we extended him, people were comparing him to like Darius in this fan base. People were comparing him to Darius Leonard and Fred Warner because their stats were somewhat similar. I'm like, you people are lunatics. I love Greenlaw. I even like Shazier.
Alshire, yeah.
Yeah, I think he's a
49ers
beast
last
too.
year played against the Colts, and one of the hosts of Locked On Colts, I believe it was him, actually said, "Bro, we thought you said Fred Warner's the All Pro. Who the hell is
Yeah, he's a
51?"
beast.
And it's like, yeah, all those dudes, man, all three of those linebackers, they just bring it, and it's really nonstop. Matter of fact, last year, Alshire hit somebody so hard against the Rams, he broke his face mask. You'll see it. His face mask was pushed in for the rest of the game. Like, those guys, yeah, that's a real thing now. Like, they bring it. Those underneath guys.
Bro, instinctual, fill the gaps, can scrape. They do everything, man. Like I think you guys have one of the best second levels, man. I absolutely love it. Man, I appreciate you doing this. We said 20 minutes, 30 minutes. It's already been about 45. Can you go ahead, plug everything you got, because you do stuff for the Giants. You're everywhere, brother. And it's crazy because I remember back when you first came on the show, set up in the bedroom and everything like that. And
Yeah,
how
at the old apartment. Yeah, I
love
remember
it.
that.
Now you're all decked out, brother, and everything was fly. So, let everyone know where they can find you, man, because you do great work.
Yeah, y'all can find me at Eric underscore Crocker on Twitter. Yeah, at Eric underscore Crocker on Twitter. And that's where I do like kind of most of my work on, from there, where I at least post a lot about things. I have a, YouTube channel that I go live on. I'll definitely get into draft content once the offseason comes. But right now, I do a morning show, typically every morning for the 49ers, or at least 3 times a week. We do that. Locked On 49ers, number one podcast on the Locked On Network, man. We
Thanks.
pull in some really good numbers. We're doing really good there. And draft season with the New York Giants and my guy John Schmilk and Tony Pauline. So we're on there, and I think come draft season, we'll be on twice a week. Right now, we will be on once a week, sometimes twice. And then Bleacher Report. I'll be on live right after the game with Bleacher Report tomorrow. So Yeah,
Awesome.
a little bit of everything. And I'm pretty sure there's a little bit more than that too. But that's enough for now. Just follow me on Twitter at Eric_Crocker.
Bro, I listen, it couldn't happen to a better person. All the success you've had coming your way, man. I appreciate you. You've always supported me. You've always, whenever you've been able to make it work, you've been able to make it work. And I appreciate you, man. I know how much travel can take a toll on someone, and you making the time for me. Because I even said, hey, man, if you want to do something after, and he's like, no, man, tonight works. Let's do it. So, man, blessings upon you, man. I appreciate you for doing that. Eric, you're the absolute man, brother.
Oh, awesome, man. I appreciate it. And anytime, man, even and you guys got enough 49ers over there. I think they call it the South Beach 49ers. That's what the 49er fans call it. So anytime you want to touch on some of those guys, or get an outsider's perspective on a game and whatnot, man, I'll come on and we can chop it up. I just love talking football. So, it's good.
You, bro. Appreciate you. And hey, you never know. Maybe we're talking again in February, bro.
Maybe,
Just
maybe,
saying.
hopefully.
Just saying,
A lot of
man.
people think that. A lot of people think that that's real quick before we get out of here.
Yeah.
The interesting thing with the 49ers is they're just that team, right? Kind of like Alabama right now. Now, I'm not saying 49ers are Alabama, but there's a chance Alabama might sneak into the college football playoffs. And I feel like just that's the team it's like, man, they're not as good as they usually are, but that's just the team you just don't want to play. And I think come postseason, that's the 49ers. I think the 49ers are that team where in the postseason, you just know they're going to bring a certain level of physicality. And it's like, man, come postseason, that's the team you just don't want to play. And Miami Dolphins, for different reasons, are going to be a team a lot of people just don't want to play. And hopefully they can meet up in the big dance. And I think that'll be something special and something really fun. Going back to what the 80s, early 80s, was there a Super Bowl?
84 when Montana and Marino, and you guys blew us out.
Yeah, okay.
And then Marino, he thought he'd be back and never did, right? Or got the AC championship.
Wow.
But what I saw crazy stat, y'all are 10-2.
Joe Burrow.
Y'all are 10-2 when Jimmy G doesn't even throw a touchdown and he starts the game.
The Jimmy thing, man. And listen, you won't hear me bash Jimmy. I think Jimmy kind of is what he is. But I think with Jimmy at quarterback, he can play well. He will play well more times than not.
Yeah.
Clearly, you look at his record with the 49ers, and he's winning like 70% of his games, right? And everybody would love that. It gets a little weird at times because even within watching him win games, you could see that there's these certain limitations that he has, but like Kyle figures out a way to just make it work. And then it just gets tougher in the postseason because then everybody cracks down and they tighten down even more in the postseason. And then now, if you look at the postseason Jimmy as opposed to regular season Jimmy, there's a drastic drop off, but they still been able to win games because the defense is so good. Debo Samuel does special stuff. You got George Kittle, you got all these guys, but Jimmy, it's a very interesting dynamic, and because you could see it two different ways, the fan base is really split right down the middle. Where you got some people they've kind of got their stakes in the ground. They're like, I'm Team Jimmy, and you got other people that are like, get this dude the hell out of there. I'm like somewhere in the middle where I'm just like, I can see them trying to move on from him, but I think for now he's a solid starting quarterback for sure. And I think a lot of the hate is definitely unwarranted for how he typically plays game to game.
Oh, we've got people in our fan base who they were out on Tua and they just don't want to admit they were wrong. And they're just not willing to give him his flowers for how he's played. They're just waiting for him to slip up. They're just waiting for him to slip up. And they're still in our fan base. And it's crazy. And this guy's doing things in the aqua and orange that Marino never did in terms of consecutive game number. Like he's done multiple things this year that Marino never did as a Dolphins quarterback. And it's just, you know what I said? I said, listen, you just can't win. If social media was around in the 90s, my fan base would be there'd be people in my fan base ripping on Marino for never winning a Super Bowl.
Yeah. Yeah.
But they're the same people those are the same people who hate Tua and want Herbert, the guy who can't reach 500.
Right. Now, I don't want to put that on Herbert.
I don't.
Because you watch him, right?
What it is. It's the franchise.
If you watch
franchise.
Herbert, if you just watch him, it is very clear that he's extremely special.
Yeah, he's gifted.
But for whatever reason, the situation he's in, the coaching and whatnot and whatever's going on there, I don't think he's in the most ideal situation. Now you got to figure it out,
Mhm.
and they have for the most part, right? I mean, like I think they'll be in the playoffs. They're kind of creeping there, but I it's tough because he doesn't have Mike McDaniel as his play caller. You know,
But he had that year that he broke all the rookie records. He had, I believe there's a few quarterback whispers in the NFL. Pep Hamilton is one of them, and Darren Bevel is the other one. And oddly enough, we have Darren Bevel right now. And he had Pep Hamilton year one. And I think that's why you saw the growth. We're talking about a smart kid, right? Like biochemistry, 4.0 GPA in university. The kid's a smart kid.
right?
And I think he's regressing because he's not getting like you watch him read defenses in the second level, and he's not learning to throw with anticipation yet. He's still got in that mode where I can afford to be late on a read because I'm so gifted with my arm.
Yeah,
When Pep Hamilton, that would have been coached out of him by now, right? And you'd see even more of a polished product. Because I've asked people, what would you take, Herbert this year or rookie Herbert? And people still say rookie Herbert. And I think it's what you're right. Coaching has been a big thing because right now he's on track to become a more gifted Phillip Rivers statistically. That's what he's
yeah.
on track to be.
I watched him against the 49ers, and it was tough because I mean they didn't have Keenan Allen, they didn't have
Yeah.
Mike Williams, they didn't have Guyton. They didn't have their
But look what he does with Jordan Palmer. He's making Jordan Palmer work,
yeah,
right?
so it's tough. It's hard for me, just like Tua. You watch Tua in the past, and it's hard for me to be like, well, yeah, no, Tua's a bust, right? Because it was like, like okay, his best receiver is Parker, and Parker's not like terrible, but it's like, damn, like
He's not number one. Yeah.
that's the extent of kind of the weapons, and it's like, well, who's the running back? Oh, it's Salman Ahmed or whatever his name. Like,
Yeah.
it was like, like that's so now he got to carry this whole thing, and now it's like, oh no, Tua's a bust, and that was the whole thing all off season. It's like, oh well, look who what were they saying? Tyreek Hill's going to play over there in Miami. Like, look who the quarterback is Tua. And you hear all the jokes and stuff, and then now you see what's going on. And you see the way he's level, raised his level of play, where between the weapons, between the coaching staff, and you've seen a much better version of it. And it's just tough that everybody's gonna get critiqued the same, regardless of the situations being so drastically different. And Trevor Lawrence, he's if it doesn't work out, oh, he's a bust. And it's like, man, dude went to the
He's
most
starting to
toxic
come on, eh?
organization. But he has come on. Yeah, he has come on. And he's doing
Wait
well.
till he
But
gets.
I'm
You
just
know what I
saying how
keep telling people?
view it.
You know what I keep telling people, Croc? Don't pass judgment until he gets Calvin Ridley next year, because Calvin Ridley is super special. Calvin Ridley could take, because this is a lot of people don't realize. Herbert having Keenan Allen early on, Josh Allen getting Stephon Diggs, Tua getting Tyreek. When you play with those elite, great players at that position, you learn nuances of that position. So as a quarterback, you learn to throw certain ways, to throw to certain spots. You learned elite nuances that you can translate that not only to your game, but when said person like Tyreek leaves and they draft a new guy, you can pass those nuances off to that receiver and help develop them and be great. And good quarterbacks do that kind of stuff. And I think that's what you're going to see with Tua. Listen, Herbert's talented. I think out of Burrow, Tua, and Herbert, he's the most gifted. The problem that he is now he's seeing Tua life, but he did have more than Burrow and Tua early on from the beginning. It's just this year they built him the line. They got the weapons. They all got injured, right? And Eckler's been absolutely phenomenal for him this year. But I wanted to ask you, is Trey before we get out of here, is Trey the guy? Is Trey the guy?
Well, I think you still got to find that out, right? It sucks for him that, you didn't really play much as a rookie. Then year two, you get hurt in the second game. I'll say this. I've seen enough of the things that I want to see from him, like areas where I'm like, hey, man, Trey needs to, improve here. Or, like let's say the first time we ever saw him in a regular season against the Seahawks last year, like it was terrible. He threw a ball at somebody's feet. He's missing slants 5 yards over guys' heads, right? Then the next time you see him, you start, his second start against the Texans, albeit it's the Texans, you don't see the terrible misses, right? Like you don't see the unforced misses, right? Unforced errors. That's what they call it in like baseball
Yeah.
or tennis, right?
Yeah.
You know, he was much more accurate. He's hitting guys, catch and run opportunities, stretching the field. Then you watch him this year in the preseason. He plays against the Packers. He completes, 5 out of 6 passes or whatever, 75-yard touchdown. You start seeing him push the ball down the field. Then you see him against the Texans. It was much more up and down. 49ers didn't have their tackles. It didn't look great. Then you go and you watch him against the Bears, and it was week 1, and he starts off very well. He did miss one throw to a tight end, which I'm pretty sure he would love to have that one back. But outside of that, man, he was playing time and rhythm. He was throwing. He made some layer throws. I'm like, oh man, that was a big time throw. A lot of people aren't even attempting. Jimmy's not attempting that throw, right? Throwing the ball, slot fades, hitting guys down the field. Everything's like, okay, it's heading in the right direction. Then the monsoon hit. Then balls start flying all over the place because it was storming. Then he came out against the Seahawks, and boom, hits Ayuk. Ayuk turns upfield 31 yards. Blitz in his face. He doesn't run or anything like that, which typically I think he would have dropped his eyes, but he stood in there knowing he's going to get hit through the slant, converted or completed the pass. I'm like, okay, he's heading in the right direction, and then boom, ankle. So I think there are going to be people that are really tough on him because of where he was drafted, the team he got drafted to, the school that he came from, and it's just unfortunate that he's had to deal with some injuries that will probably slow up some of the process. And I think next year he's not going to have any type of leeway. It's like, hey, you got to come in, you got to be the guy, and you got to be good from the jump. But I think, and I talk to people all the time about guys who end up being bust. And most guys are bust not because of a talent deficiency or anything like that. It's work ethic, who they are as a person. How much time, how much do they love it? How much do they love the bad? Do they embrace it? And from everything that I've gathered from Lance, I think he's one of those guys. So there have been definitely ups and downs. It feels like he's the right guy, but literally have no idea until you get to see him for a full season. And unfortunately for him, bad injury that made him miss this year. So I know it's a long way. You asked me, like, is he the guy? I think so.
Yeah,
but
you're seeing
we'll find
flashes
out.
and signs that he could be, right? Like that's basically what. Yeah.
I
get
think
it,
more
man.
so than how, because
Well, I saw it with Tua, brother. What I was saying to people last year, people would ask me, "Is he the franchise quarterback?" And I broken down every single drawback of him in the NFL, and my answer was, he's shown me if you invest in him in terms of weapons and protection, he could be your guy. That was my answer. That's the only answer I could give because I saw stuff I saw good, and I saw stuff that he needed to work on to become the guy. And if he worked on them, then you got something. And he's worked on them, right? Reading all 3 levels. Pre-snap, post-snap reads are much improved this year. His touch and anticipation on the intermediate second level far improved because last year he was throwing interceptions. So, that's the best answer you can give, right? People want a definite
game slowing
answer.
down for him. Game slowing down for him, and a lot of those things happen with reps. And unfortunately for Trey, he just doesn't have a lot of it. So we'll see. But I really like him. I think he's gonna be just fine.
Yeah. All right, man. I appreciate you. Everyone, I will be live tomorrow at 4:05, 3:45 Eastern. We'll be live reacting to the game. And then after the game at about 7:30 Eastern, we'll be doing the live post-game show. So, man, tomorrow, big time playoff feel. Hopefully it's a big time playoff atmosphere. Can't wait. Man, Birdman hand rub. We've been waiting all week for this one. So let's do it. Everyone, we'll see y'all tomorrow. Until next time, everyone stay happy, healthy, safe, and blessed. And as always, fins up. And again, thank you to Eric Crocker for coming on tonight.